Welcome, my name's Rob Stewart from Rob Stewart Photography. In our last issue we talked about making a basic studio, somewhere you can put in a bench in a garage and you can start to look at taking some really good photographs of the figures that you enjoy painting. Now, as I said, it's a basic studio and you have to bear in mind that the amount of space that we're talking about is probably something like this table. Well, that's all we're really going to use to get the effects that we want in both lenses and in lighting. So while this is a nice, lovely lens, we'll put this one away for now. We're not going to do much with that. So the basic lens that you would find if you buy a DSLR or you buy a mirrorless lens would be one that would be fitted onto the lens when you buy it. And they're basically called kit lenses. They are really good. They're not just cheap. They do a great job and you can really enjoy taking photographs with those. So once you've got your basic camera, basic lens, probably a kit lens like this one, what else can you use for studio work? Remember, we've only got a small space here, haven't we? So we want to be able to maximize the sense of feeling of depth or width or space within that small part of the area that we've got. Now, a couple of ways we can do that. One is with a wide angle lens. So a wide angle lens has a large piece of glass at the front and the actual viewing angle is much, much wider than a kit lens, and particularly if you're using things like landscape, that's what they would usually use. In a studio you can still use them, but it does affect the way that you focus as well, and we'll talk about the focus in a moment when we start to look at some of the stills and some of the smaller parts of that. Another thing you can use is a macro lens. Now, a macro lens is suited for taking very close up photos, usually small insects and things like that. Quite often used in product work as well, which works just as well. And it brings the subject really close to the camera. One of the disadvantages of that is that it shows every single detail. So if you've got a flaw, if your figure or whatever you're going to do isn't quite painted right, it's cracked, it's shiny, whatever it is, it will show it up. But it is a very, very useful lens, and we will be using that probably quite a bit as we look through studio work, because that's a very useful one to have. And those are the basic lenses you can use to make sure that you can have fun in a small studio, in a small space. We will go through that in a moment, but just bear in mind that buy what you can afford. If you really want to be able to do this, buy something you can afford, then play with it. If you like it, great, and you can start to invest if you really want to. But if you're not that bothered and you just want to get a few photographs here and there, that's absolutely fine. Do that. And of course, if you want to use your phone as well to take those photos, there are macro settings that you can use that with, and other type of pro photo settings that you have on the modern phones as well, like an iPhone and Samsung and one of the other ones. So when we take a photograph, light comes through the front of the lens, through the lens, through a series of flanges that are open or closed to allow light in, into the back of the sensor. Now, the measure by which light is allowed to come into that sensor is called an F number. Now, those ratings vary from high to low numbers. The lower numbers, somewhere around f4.5 down to about f2.8, up to probably around f22. Now, those F numbers affect another thing. They affect the amount of focus that you have on a subject. Now, that doesn't affect it quite so much if you're doing long distance things like this lens that I've got and you use in wildlife. But when you're looking at small subjects with a very sharp and very small focal plane, the F number does help a lot. And you'll see as we go through a series of stills in a little while just how the F numbers can affect that. When we look through that, another consideration, of course, is lighting. Now, of course, here I've got a light with me, a studio light. Also got a filling light there just to block in some of the shadows as well. You can also get studio lights. They're reasonable if you have to shop around, but they are quite bulky. So in my garage, in my studio, I have that on a stand that's been fixed to the roof so I can move it out of the way when I need to, and that can really help me and give me a bit more room that I actually really don't have at the moment. So for the next of our video, we're going to look at how lighting affects it. We'll put a series of stills out with a little bit of commentary so that we can then see just how we can use those to bring out images in the moods and in the narratives that we want. They can be nice and bright, they can be dark and moody. It really depends on what you want to do and how you want to bring out the image. So let's have a look at a few stills and we'll see how that can abate. So a standard kit lens, 24-105, can be used quite nicely, and bear in mind that we're looking at figures that are quite close to the subject, to the lens, so that while it is sharp, there's a very small plane of focus on there. There's a lot of it that will be out of focus. When we look at a small group of figures and the lens is a little bit further back from the subject, you find more of it is in focus, so the front part of it, of the wall, and the front part of the figures there. But then once you get past that, you then find that the figure behind is then getting out of focus, and that's how you manipulate it so that you can concentrate on the one figurine that's in focus, but you'll see what's going on behind that, and that will really help. Again, looking at it from fairly close, this time in a night shot, the figure at the front and the 24-105 is quite nicely in focus. But of course you want to do that, don't you? You want to have a narrative with other things coming up behind it. So therefore you'll find that the other figures, while they're out of focus, there's enough within them to see movement or to see and understand what they're doing. And if you set it further back so that they are all in focus, then you get an idea of the effects that you can use with them. Now with the macro lens you can get really close up and you can see just how close this macro lens can be. And of course the only thing with it is that while that's in focus, the rest of the picture is out of focus. But again, that's the way that we use it. That's how you can get the effects that you want. It doesn't just need to be used as close up. This one can be used from a little bit further away to pick up a figure. And again, while the front part is in focus, including parts of the building, it brings the background out of focus as well. So you still get the illusion of what's going on there, there's the planet or whatever else there is there. So again, it's the way that these lenses can be manipulated. You see how much can be covered with a wide angle lens, and again we're talking about a fairly short, a few inches set of focus. The focal plane is quite short, so again the figure on the right starts to go out of focus with that. But again, it's about how we manipulate the lenses and the focus to either bring the subject forward or to push the subject back into the picture so that you can get the angle that you want. Okay, so let's put a little bit of scale into this. I'm going to use this at a later time. This is a sandbox, and the reason for that you'll find out very soon as we go into later videos. But you'll see the amount of space that actually we need to get a really good picture within the lenses that we have. So let's build a narrative onto this. Here is a typical 40k bit of scenery, something you would use as part of your gaming, and this particular one has been set up as a ruined building. Now, just to add to it a small bit, I put a very, very rough background on it. I'm going to show you how to do these later on. This is just throwing it together just to give a mood on it. It doesn't matter too much because a lot of this will be out of focus anyway, but it will just give the mood. Okay, so let's just add a couple of figures to this so that we can just further enhance the scene. Now you notice that the lighting on this at the moment is all straightforward. So I've got a light on the left and I've got a light on the right. But look what happens when I change the type of hood. I'm going to change it to what's called a snoot, and you'll see why that's an important thing to do. And that makes a bit of a difference, doesn't it? This just concentrates a pool of light in the middle of the subject, and then that can really focus on the narrative. We're not going to worry too much about what's around the main part of the subject, and we can really concentrate on the picture that we want. Now another way of making those effects is to put the lighting behind. So the lighting comes from behind, it bounces off the subject, in this case is that pale blue of the planet. You get other effects as well, and other ways that you can manipulate, and really you can make that in whatever way you like. For instance, I'll just throw on there a couple of flying things to see what happens. You'll see what I mean. We've done a fairly similar thing with a flying creature and some of the other bits, and you can get some really good effects. Again, if you turn that front light off, you notice how you can get some really nice effects, and particularly with the shadows at the back can really look neat. They're really good, and lighting like that, along with that and that combinations of lenses, can really help and really produce some good photos. Notice how it changes, particularly when we put light behind a lighter coloured subject. In this case, I put the light, studio light, in front. It lights it all up, keeps it nice and neat, but when you change the effect, it really makes a huge difference. So you get some nice detail in those pictures. Backlighting, moving the light to the back where the light coloured planet is, will help as well and just bring a bit of a glow. Now I've also moved another small square light in the front to do some front lighting. Well, let's have a look at what lenses can do. We're going to focus on a couple of very small subjects because that's all we're going to need. A couple of orcs here and a couple of the Dark Eldar Reavers. Really is all the room that you need. So let's put on a couple of these lenses, see how they affect, and certainly what these images will look like. So lighting and lenses can affect the image that you want. What do you want out of it? What do you want to see? What kind of narrative is there? Is there going to be something moody, something dark, something bright? Just want to see the details of the figurine itself. Well, that is entirely up to you. And of course, not only do you need to have lenses and cameras, but you can do the same with lighting with your own phone as well. Often with modern smartphones, they have what they call a pro setting. So you can manipulate some of those and get some really good and sharp pictures from them. If you haven't got a camera already, use your phone, give it a go, have a look at it. That's enough for today. We're going to look at vignettes and dioramas next time, how we can make them and how they can enhance the photograph that we have. We'll also talk a little bit about the actual figurines themselves and the images we want. So, if you like what you see, like and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. You take care.